Alright, just waiting for this to pop up. Probably should have cleaned off my glasses before I started. Uh, that's an easy fix. I don't usually stream on Mondays, so hopefully now that my schedule has cleared up and become more stable, hopefully I'll be able to stream more often. But before we do any React content, because that is the goal of today's stream, is to do at least 2 reactions, which should take up a decent amount of time because I don't just sit there and watch. I fucking yap. Uh, before that, I would like to just spurg out on a little artistic thing I've been doing. Uh, so just now, before we started streaming today, I actually released another chapter of a project I've been working on called Divine Will. And yes, I am aware that the Chinese title does not translate to the English title. That is on purpose. Uh, and we will talk about that in just a moment. Uh, so, okay. Oh my god, it's so much better. I can see now. Um, okay. So yeah. So I've released. Well, that's the first chapter. I have released a new chapter of Divine Will titled Kimochi Warui. Okay, go there. Uh, yeah. It's a little all over the place. This is a dream chapter, like literally, as in the entire chapter takes place in a dream. So I guess as promotion to that, we can start talking on a little side project that I've had going on, just because I like languages and I get bored sometimes. So what do I do when I'm bored? I address the question of localization. Right? I mean, it's my own project, so uh, why not localize it myself at that point, right? Hold on, is my stream not up? Okay, wait, no, the stream is up. Uh, so I'm on the standard position of localizations should not change the content of the thing that you are localizing. You should just translate it and make it, if any changes have to be made, they should be made as minimally as possible to make it as understandable as possible to a general audience, not a shouldn't be dateable by time. Uh, you don't translate, for example, the Mahabharata or the Bhagavad Gita, or the Analects of Confucius with fucking Zoomer speak. So so the question becomes, all right, if I were to adapt this into a different language, which is entirely possible, as AI advances, I might be able to translate my own project on my own, which would be fucking wild. But it's not there yet, especially with how often I use uh, let's say technical language and use language in unusual ways sometimes on purpose. Uh, I guess to begin, let's start with covering adaptation. So, yeah, this is an entire paper for exactly that, adapting my own titles into different languages. So, adaptation over translation. When translating the titles of works of fiction, translators and publishers employ several common strategies depending on linguistic, cultural, and marketing considerations. These approaches affect how international audiences perceive and remember a work. Some of the strategies employed are: one, keeping the original title in the original language. So some works retain their original titles across all languages, such as when the title is a proper noun within the work, or the title in the original language becomes well known enough to carry itself in the target language. So an example of that would be, for example, Naruto, which it's just Naruto everywhere because it's the name of the main fucking character, right? So two, create a direct translation or equivalent. So a direct translation would be used when the meaning of the title can be effectively conveyed in another language. This method maintains the semantic core of the original title while adapting it to the target audience's language. For instance, Michael Ende's Die Unendlich Geschichte. Okay, my friend of mine who actually speaks German is going to kill me for that. but was translated into English as The Never-Ending Story. Let's see. Or you can invent a new title. So, in cases where the original title relies on a cultural reference, idiom, or stylistic wordplay that does not translate easily, a new title is sometimes created. The French film La Fabula Destin d'Amélie Poulain, released internationally as Amélie, uh, is one example. Um, this shortened title simplifies marketing while retaining a sense of original's charm. Another example is how the film Die Hard was renamed to uh, Jungla de Cristal, Jungle of the Crystal, when translated to Castilian Spanish. Titles are sometimes altered because of copyright issues or because they rely on wordplay or idiomatic expressions that lose meaning when translated. For example, the title of the manga Yotsubato uh, was retained in English rather than being translated literally, and the quirky punctuation and phrasing are integral to the charm of the original. By the way, yeah, the and is to, so we just say Yotsuba or Yotsuba and, but it's Yotsubato, so that would be kind of a translation. That'd be like halfway between a translation and keep the original. Um, Translation matchmaking. So this strategy involves renaming a work to evoke associations with unrelated but thematically similar titles. The Italian release of Die Hard, titled Trappola di Cristallo, Crystal Trap, exemplifies this approach, positioning the film within the popular action genre of its time. Let's see. Foreign subtitles are also used. A hybrid method combines the translated title with the original one as a subtitle. Uh, let's see. This approach maintains recognizability while clarifying meaning for new audiences. For example, Pan's Labyrinth, El Labyrinto de Fauno, is an example, providing clarity to non-native audiences while retaining the original flavor. Let's see. Then we have in-name only strategy, which is occasionally a translated title bears little resemblance to the original in either wording or tone. This can shift audience expectations or reframe a work's genre identity. For example, Les Rivieres Porpres, I don't know how to say that, I don't speak the language of the French, was translated as The Crimson Rivers, emphasizing atmosphere rather than literal accuracy. So I wrote this in third person, by the way. So while the author of Divine Will prefers faithful translations and disapproves of unauthorized title changes, the purpose of this project is not to produce direct translations, but culturally informed localizations. Each localized title is designed to both reflect the spirit of the web novel and possess its own individual linguistic charm in the target audience. Feel free to critique me if you speak any of these languages on how well I did, by the way, or poorly I did. As an artistic localization exercise, there we go. A Cosmic Otaku explores the creative possibilities of title localization under specific constraints. Each proposed translation must one include the name of the protagonist, sure, will be a Truman, or her hero identity, the Lolita princess. Two, imply that the protagonist belongs to or serves God without explicitly naming that deity, if possible. Uh, Three, employ wordplay to preserve the poetic and symbolic resonance of the original title. It's not always possible to satisfy this one particular, but so that's a if can. The ambiguity rule, the ambiguity of Rule 2 mirrors the dual religio-philosophical framework of the text, which alternates between Catholic and Pure Land Buddhist worldviews. Features major figures with objectivist, Calvinist, and other worldviews, but does not pretend these worldviews can coexist, even in theory. Can even in theory be concurrently true, with the encounter with ultimate reality being reserved to the final revelation and future ending of the story. So yeah, I have a lot of different people in the story with a lot of different worldviews that cannot possibly be concurrently true, and that's by design because I like philosophical discourse. So I put it as like a core thing in the story. Let's see. These are not the only constraining title rules to title localization. Localization efforts include attention to genetic linguistic relationships, phonological character, and historical context. Each translation's design reflects not only semantic meaning, but also the unique rhythm, sound, and spiritual sensibilities of the target language. The following sections of this article will be presented. Will present these localization titles organized by linguistic grouping and discuss the artistic and cultural reasoning behind each adaptation. An early experiment towards this goal can be seen in the following draft book cover concept, which visualizes the interplay between languages, faith, and identity in the world of divine will. So I can't pull this up here, but what I can do is pull up the actual thing. Okay, hold on. I can pull it up in a separate file because luckily for me, I actually have the separate file. Uh, okay, there we go. The one with the gold text is what I'm looking for. So this is my initial sketch for a book title for Divine Will. Anyone who is perceptive will notice that there's the wrong number of stars on the American flag, and that's because there's actually more states in the United States of Divine Will, because it takes place in the future, than there are in the real world. So if you if you really want to know, you can actually like use some math to count how many stars there are, and you can figure out how many states there are. You have English, Chinese title, Japanese title, Korean title, Hebrew title, Arabic title, Spanish title. This is actually Shona, and Shona actually does have some purpose in the story. It's not just there arbitrarily. Mainly because the main character pictured here is actually an intentional deconstruction of intersectionalist thought. So the idea was to create someone who would fill intersectional categories and would on the surface appear to be like the intersectionalist dream, but who is actually completely incompatible with the intersectionalist ideology. Because see here, you know, it's not exactly subtle. This is a deeply Catholic traditional, character. So not compatible with intersectional thought at all. Anyway, so yeah, this is Shona written in the Ditema script because the Ditema script is the main uh, script used for many Southern Bantu languages in the story. We have an example of ASL right here. So that's the name fingerspelled, and then this is just of God in Sutton sign writing. I could not get anyone to help me make that into a title, by the way, because obviously I don't want to have a sign language title until this character has a sign language name, and I know that I don't have the ability to do that. So I'd have to get someone to make the sign language name, so but I did want to show that conceptually I could put sign language on the title and it would work. Then you have Czech and then Kryptonian. That's the thing that definitely is the largest portion of what we're going to be reading in a moment. Because I have a lot of conlang translation adaptations for this, just because again this was a fun project. It wasn't meant to be serious. Um, so one of the goals in this design was to see details. Oh yeah, which only an attentive eye could catch. Again, a friend of mine pointed out, "Hey, that curve shouldn't be there." Oh no, it makes sense why this is here. This is not accidental. Some of these details are here on purpose. And you couldn't fucking guess why. It might be attached to the fact that this is a cephalophore. Okay, so let's get on to the actual translations. So, regarding the Bantu translations, so translations into the Bantu languages of South Africa, which utilize the Ditema Tsa Dinoko syllabary, retain the surname Truman as Truman, so phonetically spelled out. The name remains phonologically unmodified to emphasize its foreignness within Bantu phonology, while also showcasing how easily it can be rendered in Ditema script. Here are the titles presented in the traditional orthography using the Roman alphabet. So down here is this is actually how you spell Truman and the Ditema Abugida. So and I have colors associated not with Bantu culture but with American culture because yeah, uh, her ancestors may come from she's half Kaifeng Jewess and half Lemba, but her real identity is she is an American, conservative American. Okay, let's see. So Southern Sutu, we have Truman wa Modimo, not a very complex, translation. Songa is I have no fucking idea how to say this. Then we have Kosa, Venda. I have no idea how to say these either. I just know what their etymologies are. So, but I'll give it my best because I have notes on polysemy for these words down here because I do want to use these polysemies in the novel itself. So this is also notes for me to round back while writing this. So the Sangha title, Truman wa Diwembu, I have no fucking clue how to say that, by the way, employs, and I'm going to try my best because I know some of these have sounds that I'm just not going to know, just flat out. But I'm going to do my best to approximate it as much as I can reasonably. So be merciful. Like, critique my translation here and correct my mispronunciations. Feel free to do that. But, just know that I'm working on a limited pool here. Um, so employs Xiwembu, the Vasanga term for deity, and standard word used to translate God in the Sangha Bible translations. In traditional Sangha cosmology, gender is understood as an animal or biological category, not a metaphysical one. Consequently, Xiwembu predates and transcends gender distinctions, making it suitable for expressing a maximally great non-gendered divine being. The Wembu is a highly polysemic term. In addition to denoting God, it may also be used metaphorically or honorifically to refer to one's parents or grandparents, whether living or deceased. For example, the phrase Lutswari I Wembu Sa Wena, your parent is your deity, is idiomatic within Sangha culture, but is frequently misunderstood by outsiders as implying literal worship. It is common in Sangha analogy to refer to one's ancestors as Wikwembu Swa Mina, my deities, not as objects of cultic worship, but as sources of life and causal points of origination. This ancestral reverence is relational rather than idolatrous, though it is often mischaracterized as worship of the dead by cultures unfamiliar with Sangha conceptual frameworks. So, Truman wa Siwembu simultaneously conveys divine belonging and ancestral filiation. Then, to be perfectly honest, these are just like philological notes for me later. I am very well aware that this would, you know, this is just what the word entails. That was not done by design. I was just having fun writing this up. Uh, the Kosa title, Truman Ka Fixo, I know that's a click, but I don't know what click it is, uses uxio, the term employed in Kosa Bible translations to refer to God. The genitive particle ka marks relational possession or origin, yielding a straightforward idiomatic expression of divine belonging. The Zulu title Truman ka in Truman ka en kulun kulu. Uh, let's see. Truman of the old one employs un kulun kulu, a deeply polysemic term whose literal meaning is the old one or the most ancient one. In pre-Christian Zulu cosmology, uh, Un Kulu Kulu refers to the primordial ancestor, the first human and ultimate progenitor of the world. He is simultaneously ancestor and creator and source of order rather than a distant or abstract deity. In Christian usage, Un Kulun Kulu was retained as the title for God in Zulu Bible translations, leveraging the pre existing concept of a universal ancestral creator to express monotheistic theology. This conceptual overlap finds parallels in Indo Aryan devotional language, where deities are addressed as both most ancient and supreme. For example, Arjuna addresses Krishna as thou first of the gods, the most ancient person, and King Satravata addresses Hari as O first male, the lord of creation, of preservation, of destruction. These parallels illustrate that shared human tendency to conceptualize supreme divinity through the metaphor of primordial ancestry. Consequently, Truman Ka in Kulun Kulu conveys divine belonging through the idiom of ancestral primacy, situating will as belonging to the most ancient source of life, authority, and order. The table showing the oh yeah, we already talked about this. Let's see. So this one I had a bit of fun with because there is actually some real potential creative play here. Uh, so where I gave an Egyptian translation again. For some reason, when I click it here, it doesn't show. That's because I'm also in like editing mode. So I'm gonna have to pull it up from my actual computer file. Hold on. And I'm gonna thank there's an Egyptologist who helped me with this one, because Egyptian can be written in multiple ways, based on direction. So this is the actual title, written in the various ways you can do so based on directionality in Egyptian. Sorry, I know that was a bit of a roundabout sentence, but I had to think about that one on the fly. So the Egyptian title rendered the various in the various directions. The Egyptian title, and this is in Unicode. Uh, Incorporates a visual pun. Here, the standard ideogram for neter, God, which is usually a flag, uh, you know, on a pole to denote divine invisibility, is replaced by the sign neter for with a falcon. Here, you can see the falcon here. This substitution functions as a visual pun and theological reorientation, while the flag and falcon are pronounced the same. The falcon alludes to Horus through a visual pun, as Horus is represented with a falcon outside of this standee, so he's not actually on this stand. Because Horus is the hawk god of kingship. This decision was made after reading Psalm 91:4. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. So there's an intense, again, pun here, uh, that's intent for the purpose of ambiguity. Uh, Also, Will's name is transcribed in a cartouche, which is visually reserved for royalty and divinity. So let's go on to the Germanic translations. So translations into Germanic languages involve adapting the surname Truman, and yes, it is written this way. This is actually a name attested in some name registries. It's not very common, but it is a real name. By deconstructing it into its morpheme components, true and man, and tracing back each element to their common ancestor forms in Proto-Germanic, trues and man. From there, their descendant cognates are identified across relevant modern languages and reconstructed into an equivalent name that maintains the genealogical and linguistic continuity, even if the meaning shifts in the process. Uh, and none of these meaning shifts are all that important, because all of them will eventually be covered in the web novel, to be perfectly honest. Um, so we have Afrikaans becomes Truman van God, married one of God, because Trouw is, or Tro, I don't know if that's Trouw or Tro, means marriage, not, you know, true. But I guess, there's the, you should be true in your marriage, right? You have Danish translation is faithful one of God, Dutch is faithful one of God, German is faithful one of God. Same as Truman, because Truman in the English name also means faithful one of God. He's a true faithful man. The Icelandic one is Trumathor af Guth. I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't speak Icelandic. But here, true actually denotes belief in a religious context, such as, for example, trulesye, faithlessness, or Bokstaf true, fundamentalism, or an Asatru or Vanatru, which are the names of the neo-pagan religions centering on the Aesir and the Vanir, for example. So in this case, it becomes the believing one of God. Uh, I don't know why this one has disappeared on me again, but this one is no different. This is another believing one. Actually, hold on, that was the wrong one. That one was on me. So Norwegians, faithful one of God. Swedish, believing one of God again, because tro is belief, whether religious or epistemic. Scots, again, faithful one of God, and then Yiddish, because Yiddish is a Germanic language, faithful one of God again. So we keep this pattern consistent across the languages, and I try to do this with language groups to keep the way that it's translated consistent. I'm realizing there's no real way to go through and try to read all of them, so let's go here. The only exceptions are for English titles themselves. So, because there seems to be a habit of, or there used to be a habit of translating and adapting titles across British and American products, like, for example, Harry Potter going from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the Philosopher's Stone in the original version, to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which, in my opinion, is a bit of a downgrade of a title. Um, So with English being a form of English linguistic purism, we exclude Latinate borrowings such as divine in favor of a native Germanic rooted vocabulary. So we go from divine will to godly will, which means a pious will in this case. Uh, in the case of British English, the only way to really change this would be to change it to God's will, so we do this. And then for Old English, we go with Godes Wila, which is just this translated into Old English. I figure that like the British title would probably have priority because it is Anglo-Saxon. Uh, so let's go to the Romance translations. Most of these are consistent. Again, like most of the Germanic languages are consistent. In the case of the Germanic languages, I picked this strategy one because Truman is the name, the family name of the character, but also because this has a bit more of a Lutheran and Calvinistic bend in the name. the story is not about Lutheran or Calvinism, but again with that sense of play with religion. Translations into the Romance languages diverges from the Germanic approach by employing the protagonist's nom de guerre, Lolita Princess, as the eponymous anchor of the localized title. This choice reflects the aesthetic and phonological sensibilities of the Romance tongues, where lyrical rhythm and cultural connotation often take precedence over morphological reconstruction. Uh, okay, I was being a bit too artistic here, to be perfectly honest. I need to change this because that's a bit extra. So most of these are going to be in the sense of Lolita of God. So Lolita de Deus, Lolita de Dio, Lolita de, again, Dio, because Italian and Ladino are so similar. You have the Latin title down here, Lolita Dei. So, mostly consistent, except for the French title, which is Lolita de l'Eternel. So Lolita of the Eternal One. And then Lolita Louis Dumneseu or Dumneseu. I don't know how to say that. Lolita of Lord God, and this is just because these are unique titles for God in those languages. Uh, in the case of the Eternal One, the French title denotes timelessness, implying that Will's God transcends temporal succession. From this perspective, the story's beginning, end, and every moment in between coexist as an eternal now. It's eternalism. Regarding the Romanian title, that's just because this is the title for Big G God, which is what the title is supposed to refer to. But it also happens to be derived from the Latin word Domine Deus, again, Lord God, which is where we get the title from. Semitic translations. This one I actually had some fun with. So, translation into Semitic languages incorporates the concept of divine filiation directly into the title through the protagonist's given name, emphasizing her status as daughter of God. As you'll notice, it's a very common title here. Uh, this approach highlights the familial relationship between the divine and human, a concept linguistically embedded in many Semitic theonyms and theophoric naming traditions. So, here we have, let's start with the Hebrew one, because Hebrew, obviously comes to mind. Uh, where did I put it? The title would be Will Bat Elohim. Very straightforward, and it does relate to the fact that, again, the Torah and the greater Tanakh do refer to God as, Father, and it does refer to human beings as his children. So divine filiation right there. Will, daughter of God. The Arabic one is also a bit of a. I I would like to say that I did this on purpose, but it was definitely not on purpose. It was just a happy accident. Is Woe, daughter of the God. I mean, obviously, because Allah is the God, and Allah is the name of God used by Jews, Christians, and Muslims in the Arabic world. But funny enough, it's just will transcribed would be three letters, wa, l, uh, and then it just turns out that that also happens to be how you write out the word in Arabic for woe, which is interesting because let's go down to the notes about the Arabic title. Uh, this is a pun. The Arabization of Will's name is we already talked about that. When omitting the nukat, so that's how you mark vowels. And normally in Arabic, you don't write the vowels. Uh, let's see again. Nukat being non-obligatory uses of diacritics to represent the disambiguate vowels. Thus, the title can be read doubly as Woe, Daughter of God, and Will, Daughter of God. Uh, let's see. Did I? Okay, yeah, here it is. Uh, this is interesting again because you know, it has a double meaning for divine filiation that we were talking about, which is rejected by the Quran. Quran, Surah 5:18 and Surah 112 3 through 4 are very clear that that Allah has no children, and that no one can be spoken with relation to God, even in metaphor, as his children. So, in the one hand, it could be read as, woe to you who believe you are Allah's child, or like, woe to God, woe to the daughter of God. So, it was just something I noticed while doing that. That was definitely a happy accident. I did not intend that. It was just one of those things like that's actually kind of cool. So, moving on to Amharic, we have Will, daughter of the Lord of the world. That's because in Amharic, the name for God is uh, Igziabher. Again, I definitely butchered that. Which happens to be the word for the name for God in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tehuido Church tradition and in Amharic Bible translations, which means literally "we're a Lord of the world." And you can get the etymology right here. I had to do a little bit of like research to figure out how to translate it as "daughter of God," but I eventually did get it. So it is a functional equivalent, from what I understand, grammatically to Will bint Allah and Will bat Elohim. Um, so then some of these are just for fun. Obviously, I have the Syriac title here, uh, which is again very simple. Would be I don't remember what this particular word is pronounced as. I probably should have written that down. Uh, the real play here comes from like again Akkadian, Phoenician, and Ugaritic, because those were polytheistic cultures. So the Akkadian one is probably the one that's the most fun. So I'll just talk about this for a bit. The Akkadian title, which would be again I should have written the titles, but it's right here is a determinative. So Akkadian uses determinative, which are basically meaning signs to disambiguate what the sounds coming after it mean. So this is a sign used that precedes female names, and then we have peel because there's no w sound in Akkadian, and when transcribing w sounds, they opted for a p for some reason. I don't know why. Um, you have daughter. Uh, no, this would be daughter. So this would be a peel. Uh, and then you have this determinative here, which in this case is actually both determinative and logogram. So this is an. An being, or also read as Ilum. As Ilum, it just means God or a deity. But as An, it means very specifically the supreme God of the sky. So there's that. And then, oh, it was right here. I had all these fucking notes here. So it'd be Marat. Sa is the genitive. So yeah, it would be read as Marat Sa or Marat Shah Ilum. Damn, I really should have paid it. I really should have taken notes before I did this. Uh, then you have again the Phoenician and the Ugaritic. Again, it's just will, daughter of God in that language, except Il and El are again the polytheistic understanding of the Semitic God. So there is no evidence that Judaism stems from the Semitic culture. There is also no from the Semitic polytheism. There is also no evidence that the polytheism came from the Jewish religion. There is no evidence either or. Both religions are so ancient, we cannot reconstruct what the original belief of the Semitic peoples were. Although I do think that there's more a compelling case for the monotheistic hypothesis than there is for the polytheistic hypothesis. But historically speaking, polytheists have never had an issue with incorporating the gods of monotheistic religions into their own religion. You can see this with the Hypsisterians, where the Greek pagans tried to worship the Jewish god. We can see this in books of the Old Testament, where they talk about the polytheists trying to fold in the Jewish god into their own worship and where you had people going away from the Jewish God while still acknowledging the Jewish God and going after the Baalim. You know, and you even see this in World War II Japan, where you had Japanese thinkers from the Kokugaku school, especially the Midogaku school, where they tried to fold in the god of Christianity into Shinto by identifying the god of Christianity as the creator god of Shinto. So again, like, just because the name of a particular deity, a monotheistic deity, appears in a polytheistic work, does not mean anything. Hold on, let me check something. Testing, testing. Okay, good. Sorry, I realized I didn't check my sound. I'll okay. Now that we've got this done, and this is moving faster than I thought it would. The Sinosphere translations. So this is a oh yeah, I forgot here regarding the Ugaritic title. Il was both the name of the chief city deity in the Ugaritic pantheon and linguistic cognate with El and Arabic Il. In Canaanite myth, Il was described as Abu Bani Ili, father of the gods, and Abu Adami, father of humanity, situating Will symbolically as both sister to the divine and humankind. So anyway, now back to being a goofball. Let's see. The Sinosphere translations. The primary languages of the Sinosphere, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese, offer a unique arena for artistic and theological reinterpretation, though not generally genetically related. These languages share deep historical ties through orthographic, religious, political, and lexical borrowings from Chinese or from classical Chinese. Each translation thus reflects not only linguistic structure, but also the philosophical, spiritual, and cultural frameworks that shape the region. So, for Chinese, I opted for Tian Shi. Now, there's a reason why, because Tian has a lot of different meanings, including potentially being, for example, in Moism, a basically a god in Moism. So this fits the theological ambiguity. It points to God, but doesn't directly name God. But it also has a number of other meanings. For example, Confucianism, Moism, Taoism, Chinese Buddhism, Manichaeism, and Chinese Catholicism all use Tian, or heaven, in very different ways. And Shi is the, again, surname, the Chinese surname. The character has two surnames, if you notice. One at the beginning of her name, Shi, in the Chinese style, and Truman at the other side, at the back. So both the Eastern and Western placements means stone of heaven, and I actually got the idea for that for and again, there's symbolic importance of stones here because it mirrors a Vietnamese term, specifically Hien Tech, so which is a meteorite, stone that falls from heaven. So again, celestial. The Japanese one is not exactly that, not exactly that clever, but you'll often find, for example, like Kami-sama no, and then insert subject there in like many manga titles. Uh, it's like Kami-sama dolls, for example, comes to mind. Kami-sama no doru. Uh, this just means will of God. Then you have Sin Ui Will, which is again just will of God in Korean. That should be marking the pronunciation, not the concept of will. Hold on, let me change this. So one of the ones I break this rule is for Manchu, because Manchu actually did have a period where the Chinese characters were pronounced with Manchu readings. So I can, again, as we can reinterpret the pronunciation of the name. For example, here, where Shur is reinterpreted as Hach, which is just stone in Vietnamese, stone of the Lord above. So we have stone of the heaven Lord, which is what they call God in both Mandarin Catholicism and in Manchu. So again, just fucking around. We have Tibetan here. I have a Tibetan title. Shur of the Triple Refuge. Again, Shur is a phonetic transcription. The Tibetan title makes use of Dekon Machog, which is one of these is not pronounced, but I'm not entirely sure which. Tibetan has some pronunciation guides I'm not too familiar with, but the policy actually here, because I could have used a different word for God instead, but I opted for Triple Refuge for this purpose. In Orthodox Buddhism, it refers to the Buddha, Dharma, or doctrine, and the Sangha, which is the religious community. In folk Buddhism, it refers to a powerful supernatural impersonal being to whom prayers are often addressed. And then finally, in Christianity, it's actually the term used in Tibetan translations of the Bible. to refer to the Trinity, obviously God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. So Slavic translations, again, different form, but it's actually pretty straightforward. All of them more or less fit into this mold. The Slavic translations follow the pattern of divine adjective, followed by the given name, followed by God in the genitive case. So we end up with divine will of God. To make use of a tautological construction and hint at a deeper theological premise. The adjective at the beginning suggests the divine nature inheres within her person, while using God in the feminine genitive case adds a possessive layer. And yes, it has to be feminine because the case has to agree with the thing being possessed, not the possessor. Anyway, so in other words, she belongs to God. This was chosen to allude to the core doctrine of Christian theology known as divinization in the West and known as theosis in the East. So put that in there. This doctrine is that the human soul is chosen by God to participate in the divine nature, which was made possible when the divine soul actively participated in the human nature through the incarnation. Just as God does not become creation when he becomes man, man does not become uncreated when he becomes as God. Uh, but by the way, theosis is actually directly talked about in the book itself, uh, in the web novel itself. So then we have some international auxiliary language translations. International auxiliary languages, auxlangs, are constructed languages deliberately designed to serve as a means of communication between people who do not share a common first language. These languages were invented with the aims of serving as a global backup language to facilitate more efficient communication. None of them ever worked, by the way. International auxlangs were invented for global use, while others were invented for regional usage. So those are zonal auxiliary languages. I only have two in here because there's only two of them I know anything about. Esperanto and Ido. I do know a little bit about Novoyel and Volapük, but not enough to come up with a title. I have other more interesting things before that. For example, I'd like to put an engineered language in here. I don't have anything here yet, but engineered languages, or eng-langs, are different from natural or auxiliary tongues in that these languages are designed not for communication or universality, but as experiments in linguistic theory. Each eng-lang embodies a philosophy of what language is and ought to be: logical, emotional, alien, deliberately non-human, yada yada yada. This is the one that I think most people will be most interested in because this is conlangs specifically. So out of a spirit of creative play, I have undertaken the meticulous task of localizing the title into artlangs. These artlangs, or artistic languages, serve not merely as linguistic experiments, but cultural reflections of the societies that speak them, each revealing distinctive mythologies, grammars, and theological assumptions. In this section, the translations illustrate how the title evolves when filtered through invented linguistic systems designed to embody alien yet or internally, not minimally, consistent worldviews. This section is under construction. Yeah, obviously, I can't put a title. I can't put a table here because I can't type this out in a font that this program will, be able to let me use. So I kind of had to put this in here. But here's the title: Will Nisag in Atlantean from Atlantis: The Lost Empire by Disney. Funny enough, the one invented by Mark Okrand. This one was pretty easy. The lexicon was available. The grammar rules were easy to follow. That wasn't that hard. I don't know how to use Osmolao yet, but I would like to be able to make a title in that. The Dothraki title is so far, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Will Bojori. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it seems pretty simple. There doesn't seem to be that many ways to articulate the concept of God in Dothraki to play with, so that was pretty simple. Dovasul, I did decide to get a little bit creative with. So we have Will do Thor Serahe, so which translates into will of the overlord of the gods. So this reflects the Dova lesser Dedra, who are themselves immortal deities, sociology of respect through power. Thor denotes not Thor. Thor denotes an absolute ruler whose authority derives from strength. Thus, the Thur Serahe is the strongest of all gods, a being before whom even Daedric princes would yield. Let's see, consistent with the Dova's hierarchical cosmology. So it's God whose authority is not through his ontological primacy, but rather through use of force doctrine. let's see. The draconic title will be under construction. This is from a YouTuber. Hold on, let me open this up. I'll just show it here. Uh, this guy right here, Human1011. His language is fascinating. I just haven't had the time to study it to make a what do you call it, title for it yet. Now I'm gonna have to pull up another one from my file because Gallic Vulcan does not render correctly vertically in this. So if I wasn't in the creative mode, it would render correctly, but since I am in creative mode, it does not render correctly. So this is the title in Gallic Vulcan. Now, what does that say? It says will to will to Oekon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. This was double checked actually by a Vulcan speaker, so this one I can be pretty confident in this. The Vulcans don't really have a concept of a personal god. Their god is more of a logical source, which I mean does fit. Most of the arguments for the existence of God don't really like establish a personal creator, but they do establish a logical source. So that does fit. The High Valerian title is pretty simple because much like some of the other ones we've had, there's not really a lot of ways to translate it. So I got Jaiho Vil. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong again. The Houthis was fun because and a pain in the ass because the limitations of the Houthis corpus and grammar uh, kind of had me forced me to be a little creative here. The title I came up with is Truman Tuta de Lorda, which would translate to Truman from that boss. The Houthis' lexicon and grammar are only partially attested, drawing primarily from the film dialogue and cataloged in compendiums such as the complete Wermo's Houthis dictionary. As a result, any extended translation into Houthis necessarily involves informed approximation rather than strict grammatical certainty. The Houthis corpus lacks a term corresponding to the concept of deity, let alone a monotheistic conception. The existing vocabulary is insufficient to form a direct calque of a monotheistic theology, but the title adaptation derived from the existing lexicon reflects the Hutt's pragmatic, hierarchical, and power oriented worldview rather than a metaphysical abstraction. In the absence of a term for God, the title substitutes Lorda, boss, ruler, authority figure, which in Houthis denotes supreme social dominance. This choice frames divinity in terms intelligible to Houthis culture, not as a moral absolute, but as an ultimate locus of power and command. Houthis possesses four grammatical articles, ta, bu, ja, and do, which may function as intensifiers, but whose precise distribution and application rules remain undocumented and unclear. Rather than arbitrarily selecting one, the demonstrative tuta, that, is employed to provide emphasis and specificity, yielding the sense of that boss, a singular, unmistakable authority. There is no clearly attested morphological strategy in Houthis for expressing grammatical possession. Consequently, the relationship between Truman and that boss is conveyed through provenance rather than ownership. The construction tuta de lorda is therefore read as from that boss, implying origin, commission, or sending. So, yeah, I mean, there you go. There's that. So, in a sense, the goal here was to suggest that will is sent, authorized, and backed, by that boss who happens to be God, and that God would be represented here by hierarchical origin and delegated power, as opposed to ontological supremacy. So, Helen was a bit of a pain in the ass because it took me a little while to figure out how this worked. But again, I know I'm mispronouncing this because I don't know what sound this is. But it's basically Li Will Ye Li Aron, which would translate to will of the Lord. So this Li particle here is appended at the beginning of a name to turn it into a topic. So will is a topical marker, but it attends to proper names in general. And Li Aran was actually what I found in the Keelan translation of the Tower of Babel. So, you know, the Lord, right? So that's what I opted to use here. Uh, let's see. The Klingon one was pretty simple. I got this one certified from a Klingon speaker. So it's a it's a Poon. I can't say it. Uh, it's like a clone wheel, something like that. This is the one another one I had a lot of fun with trying to do. So this is the Kryptonian translation, and this was fun because there's actually two different Kryptonian languages, and they both have their own limitations. Uh, so let's see. The Doyle Kryptonian is the one on the top. This is the handwritten script. And then the Schreier Kryptonian used in the Man of Steel. So this is actually fan made, but it was used a little bit in the Supergirl TV series, which I was never a big fan of. So the CW series did use this on occasion. Uh, and then this was used by the Man of Steel film, and I wish that the video recordings of them speaking in this language were actually in the fucking movie. But fair enough. Uh, so for the Doyle Kryptonian, we have, and I'm gonna butcher this, and feel free to tell me I'm butchering this. Tiv Giuel Jediv Wheel. So Eul denotes deity. The prefix ziu is a superlative, super, forming Ziuel, super god, inspired by Grant Morrison's book Super Gods, What Masked Vigilantes, Miraculous Mutants, and a sun god from Smallville can teach us about being human. That book, hold on, that book can be read here, and it can also be bought on Amazon. So, uh, yep, here it is. Let's see. Super God is a term the book uses to refer to superheroes like Captain Marvel as American gods of American mythopia. And since Jiu is a superlative to Superman, specifically as the greatest among these American gods. Moreover, the polysemy also allows for allusion to a god of gods, a concept directly named in Deuteronomy 10:17, Rig Veda, Book 10, Hymn 121, as well as Justice League Darkside War Shazam Volume 1 Chapter 1, which is titled, which has Shazam, I hate that name, but has Shazam as the God of Gods. The Schreier Kryptonian, on the other hand, a little bit, but I had to play with this one because, again, the corpus was a little limited, but it did give me something to play with. So here I had Yelso Ran Mal, Yelso Ran Mal Wheel Ran. Yelso means deity. Suffix ran indicates the totality, all of. And then the particle ma expresses possession. So the whole reading would be all of will belonging, all of will belongs to all of God, would be the sense derived here. So all of wills, yeah, all of will of all of God would be like probably the quickest and easiest way to translate that. Let's see. In both conlangs, Rao, the sun god of Krypton, is regarded as Krypton's high god, but this presents a problem as Rao is an actual character in the comics, distinct from the creator himself, so his name was omitted from the translation. The La'adan title, Bide Bi Will Lahilatho Wo, indicates how will relates to God and showcases the unique grammar of the language. Lahila means holy one. The suffix tho indicates belonging by defined cause, law, custom, or purchase, echoing Jewish covenantal and Christian redemptive motifs of divine worship. We have the Lolcat title, which is pretty simple. Wheel of Ceiling Cat, because Ceiling Cat is just most high in lol speak. I don't have a Mando translation yet. I forgot to get that one, but I don't want to use the word El in the translation, even though that's what's being used to refer to God in the Mando Bible. That being said, I think we could probably come up with like a translation for all powerful, like Pancrator, which I think would probably be more fitting. So it would be like will of the all powerful, but I'll have to check. This was one that I needed to get done before I even considered doing this video because I was told that, and I could not find anyone to verify this. The word for God in Mangani was Usin. Mangani is the language and species of apes that Tarzan is associated with. They're not gorillas. They're not gorillas at all. They are their own thing. Uh, Mangani literally means great ape. Man is great, and Gani is ape or ape-like thing. So, but I did manage to find the word for God in Mangani, and it happened to appear in the chapter called "The God of Tarzan," which is Jungle Tales of Tarzan, Chapter 4, and it's Bula Mutu Mumo, which means E-G-C-O-C-D. So, context: Tarzan actually teaches himself to read over time. It's not a very quick process, but he does manage to teach himself to read in the novels. And the way he describes the letters on a page while he's trying to disentangle what these things mean, are as bugs. And he notices some of them are big and some of them are small. So the big letters, capitals, the majuscule, are the he bugs, and the small ones are, the minuscule, the uh fuck, I forgot what the other word was. Anyway, are the she bugs. So literally writing, and the reason God in particular draws his attention is apparently because in the book he notices that it's a dictionary, by the way, he's talking about, with other words that are led by he bugs. So it leads to an actually really fascinating story. If you get the chance, read The God of Tarzan. It's actually pretty interesting. But it tells us a lot about what Tarzan figures out about God. Originally, he assumes he's a mighty chieftain, king of all the Mangani, great apes, but eventually he comes to realize that God is not only creator but sustainer, and he's also the source of all good. And he associates events beyond the agency of Go Mangani, Tar Mangani, and Mangani to divine causation. Now, uh, to be clear, Mangani, again, this is how we know the Mangani aren't apes, because we actually know what the word for, I mean, they're not gorillas, because we know what the gorilla word for gorilla is in Mangani. It's Bolgani. Uh, Mangani means great ape, and humans are Zan Mangani, which means skin great ape or naked great ape. Actually, it's right here. Yeah, so skin great ape or naked great ape. The Bolgani or the flat ape, the Balgani or the golden ape or orangutans, the Tongani or the purple apes or the baboon, referring to their face. Uh, and then you have the people are referred to as human beings are referred to as a form of Mangani, which tells us that the Mangani associate humans as being closer to them than the other apes, because they refer to us as a kind of Mangani, and they split human beings apart into two different kinds. So we have the Go Mangani, literally black great apes, and then the Tar Mangani, the white great apes, refer to the black men and the white men. There's actually a very interesting anthropology in Tarzan from the language. It's actually fascinating. There is one part that might have caused some confusion, though, which is the existence of the Bol Mangani, obviously drawing from Bolgani and from the Mangani tradition of naming human beings. It refers to a flat great ape, which is a species of gorillaman from the 1967 filmation cartoon Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. Okay, so I'm going to stop nerding out about Tarzan because I actually find the language of the apes really interesting. Um, Navi title was a bit of a interesting thing. There wasn't really a word for deity in Navi. There's a title for Ewa, and there was a clear way to translate Yahweh as like Lord into Navi, which was a Yahweh, and that's how the Navi Bible actually translates title of God, because Ewa is very clearly a pantheistic concept, whereas Yahweh is very clearly a panentheistic concept, and the two are not bridgeable in any way, shape, or form. So there was no point in even attempting any kind of like uh, what would you call it, ambiguity here. We just have to cut to the chase. The will of Yahweh in this case. Uh, so yeah. We have the Quenya Will Eruo Iluvataro. Uh, yeah, so again, this is will of the All Father, because Eru Iluvatar means all father, like all father, the one all father. Uh, so and then the Eruo Iluvataro is just the genitive inflection of that particular name. The Romulan title is Wilha Hir no Ham. God, that's a hard word to say. Which means will commanded by God. And this is because it incorporates the prefix here commanded by, or led by, which reflects the Romulan militarist spirit and implying a divine directive in spiritual warfare. I don't have a Sindarin title. I don't have a Shevu title. I do like Sevu though, and I don't have a Deva Devfa title. Oh my god, I can't talk right now. I have a whole section on what needs to be done for a sign language translation, which I really do want. I really do want someone to help with the sign language translation. That would be really fucking like I'd be over the moon. That being said, I can't do that myself, so I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna put like these are things that I do know have to be done though. And we have the translations not otherwise specified. I have one for Ainu, which is Kamui Kor Wheel. Burmese, I have no fucking clue how to read that, but translates as will of the spirit, will of the noble one for Burmese, because the noble one can refer to God. It can also refer to the Buddha. Uh, Czech is so far Boji Trumanova. Trumanova being the female name for Truman here. Like, a man would be Truman, woman would be Trumanova. Um, so it's like Miss Truman of God. The Greek is will to demiurgo, which is will of the creator. There's some polysemy there because most people are going to hear demiurge and they might think Gnosticism, but they don't know that the Greek Orthodox Church also calls their creator deity, who they think is the true God, the demiurge. So, uh, you have Willy Ake Akua, and I think I'm going to have this be a pattern that's repeating because Willy here means drill, and there does seem to be, if I phonetically adapt the name of Will into the Polynesian languages, it does seem like I might be able to come up with some polysemy to work with there. Uh, because I found similar potential play puns in Maori and another one in Tonga. I have to do a little bit more research into that though. So Hindi, it's Parameshwar, uh, it's Parameshwar Ka Will, which means will of the Supreme Lord. Ishvar is God, basically big G, and then Param is supreme, like the highest, the utmost. So the Supreme Lord. Polish so far is Boja Will of God, pretty simple. Proto-Indo-European was pretty fun. I phonetically adapted will into wille, and then I use dives patres, which is Sky Father, which is also etymologically linked to the actual modern term Deus Pater, which is uh, the God the Father in Latin. Here we have Deus Pater is the Sky Father of Indo-European religion. It is etymologically rooted to the Rig Veda's Iaius Peter, the Roman Jupiter, and Dies Peter, the Iliadic Greek Zeu Pater, among others. So, it is a very important deity, does kind of lean into the Ur monotheistic themes that I was alluding to. Let's see. We have Sanskrit. Again, we're using I need to change this because I thought I used the Parameshvar form, but I did not. It seems. Oh well, yeah, I can go and fix that later. Shona is Will Wa Mwari, again Will of God. Swahili Will Wa Mungu, which is again the Will of God. Tagalog Will Dios. I do have a like idea to go in here and actually write will in Latin characters and then Dios in Babian, which is the original script that was used to write Tagalog. But again, it just means will of God. And then here, I found something interesting. Apparently, will, when Tamilized, right here, actually means bow, as in like bowstring, bow you shoot an arrow from, or a rainbow. Ah, interesting. There's some polysemy I can use in there. I can actually add an arrow and, some rainbow motifs in there. Tokipona was pretty simple. John Wile Sewi. Tokipona is notoriously simple, notoriously ambiguous, so it literally comes out as divine wish person. But Wile is just how you would write will in, you know, Tokipona. And then Urdu is, will of God, where we use Huda instead of Allah or, Bhagavan or Parameshwar. Because Urdu and Hindi are basically dialects of the same language. So yeah, a lot of pretentious notes here, to be perfectly honest. And then we have one for a language that I invented myself, and I'm still in the process of inventing. It's for the Gaur, which is one of the races that are saved in the alien salvaging operation in the web novel so far. Now, the Gar title is actually modeled after the name traditions that the Gar will, they don't have it yet, but will have. So here we have Hi Papa U Truman B. And in here we have, it's a, uh, so high is a absolute superlative. One, it means there's nothing beyond this. High. Papa is the name of God to the Gaur. They have a father worship. They have a father worship religion, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. I kind of wanted to reuse and invert the use of Papa in Darling in the Franxx, where it's very obviously subverted in Darling in the Franxx for a good reason. I wanted to have it inverted so it's actually correctly applied in theological categorization for the Gaur. U is a possessive marker. It's equivalent to the apostrophe S. And then Truman is a pun here because true refers to the proper order underlying reality. So think of like the Tao, Logos, or Rita. So true refers to the Tao, Logos, or Rita, but man refers to a star. So the properly ordered star. And then B is the thing you append to a female surname as opposed to Po, which is what you append to a male surname. So then what we have is Hi Papa U Truman B, which is the female rightly ordered star of the Supreme Father, designed, in this case, to look like a female Gar surname. Uh, so yeah, there we go. I've been pretentious about this enough, so let me stop talking about me wasting my time, like trying to come up with creative translations of a title for a work no one's going to read. All right, close it out, close it out.